Sully. South Pinellas 912.
Okay, great.
I'm Ken Roberts, I'm a retired business executive
Great.
and troublemaker.
Wonderful.
I'm Jeff Lukens. I'm with the Tampa 912, and I'm also with the Hillsborough County Republican Party. I'm a Republican club president in the county,
He's also district captain for Blanchard State.
and that's and a district. Yep,
Good.
absolutely.
Good. I'm Barb Hazelden, and I'm leader South Pinellas 912.
Wonderful.
And I'm Valerie Pickard. Came over from Orlando, and I'm a district captain for Orlando for Convention of States, just like Jeff is for Hillsborough County, right? So.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Mike Pollack, and I'm creating an organization called Trustees of Liberty, and my children recite the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Glenn Pav with the Glenn Pav Show, Writing the Right, the radio show that's heard in the Tampa Bay area, and we're going to have Convention of States on the third Monday of the month at 9 a.m. And we're going to have Mark Meckler and Michael Farris and all the group there for that. And I'm also a Pinellas County Republican Executive Committee.
John,
Yeah.
in time.
I'm John Nelson. I'm the chair of the Highlands Tea Party in Highlands County and also in the Highlands County Republican Executive Committee.
Introduce yourself.
Mark?
I'm John Beeler. I'm from St. Pete, and I'm with Pinellas 912.
Oh, Mark Grossenbach, Tampa 912.
Well, I've got Pam on a wild goose chase because I handed the microphones. I was given two microphones and I handed them both to the person. Right, one microphone was the right one to give to, and one was the wrong, and I apologize. We'll get it back in just a second.
We're trying to round up a couple chairs too.
Okay, so you guys have heard me for a while now. I think it's good to get feedback, answer questions that you have for me. What would you like to hear from me? What would be helpful to help you make this happen here in this part of Florida?
Well, how do you oversee the structure specifically?
Well, there isn't one magical answer to this. There's a lot of different ways that can do it. Existing organizations that want to endorse this project don't have to necessarily get folded into a Convention of States mailing list or anything like that. It'd be, it's helpful in communicating alerts and so on, but all we care is that 100 people contact their legislator, however that happens. So we're about recruiting legislators and having clear methodology of getting enough people to call. That's it. And so I don't need all your people to sign up on our website. I'm not looking for money from anybody. I mean, if somebody wants to give money, I'll take it. But we have good funding, and so it always helps to have some more. So I don't want to turn down people's support. But this is not a situation where you have to sign up a whole bunch of people so you can try to do grassroots fundraising and everything like that. We're in a solid financial position, and so I need people, coalitions that'll help us build. And so our model, kind of understanding our model helps get the idea. How are we doing on the microphone?
Pardon?
How are we doing on the microphone?
That should be coming.
Okay, all right, good. All right.
I'm just a hired help, don't worry.
So in every state we have 3 state leaders. One is our overall state coordinator, whose job it is to coordinate the district captains, make sure that they have all the materials that they need to be functioning as a district captain. The second person is a legislative liaison, whose job it is to work with the legislature. And the third is a coalitions director. And that coalitions director is designed to build relationships with groups like the 912 group. Because we don't need or want everybody's mailing list. We want you on our mailing list. So, and your other leadership. But if your people sign up, that's great. That's gravy, but it's not necessary. Mm-hmm. So 100 people. In fact, it is highly probable that we win with 100. If we have 1,000 in every legislative district, I guarantee you we'll win. Goes from probable to absolute guarantee of victory. And you think about that. One of the groups, in here, I'll tell you, stuff that's in progress. I won't say it out there, but in progress, we're working with. His name's Dean Clancy. What's the big Tea Party group in D.C.? Freedom Works. Okay, all right. They've got 4 million people on their list. 4 million people, and their VP, their political VP, is a guy that I told you about the 3 million phone calls in 8 days. Well, he was Dick Armey's chief of staff, and it was called the Army Amendment that we pushed. And so Dean Clancy and I did that together. I ran the outside operation, Dean ran the inside of Congress operation. And you do a deal like that, you become bonded for life. And Dean's personally on our team and wanting to make it happen. He's trying to get that group. And so we've got a lot of things like that happening. So, I wouldn't ask them for all their people. I just ask for their help. And so that's our request to other organizations. I want your help. I don't want your people.
Do you have a House rep?
Yeah,
You've got
yes,
Alan Hayes.
apparently Mets.
Mets.
Oh, Mets, okay.
Yeah.
One of the people that we need to get everybody to email and send letters and call is Weatherford, because he's on the cusp. And I think if a lot of people can call him and he starts seeing that there's a growing interest, then he'll get on board.
Do you know who's fighting you is John Birch?
Yeah, I know.
So is there any hope to bridge that gap?
No, well, there's
Because
hope.
their argument is it's going to be a runaway.
Right. We are pulling individual members of the John Birch Society and the Eagle Forum in our direction. There is no chance on the earth that we'll convince the leadership. I actually have. Well, they just have so much emotional turf built into the runaway convention stuff that it's been an article of faith for them for 40 years or more, and it's irrational. I mean, it's irrational, and they're wrong in their history. And they run around with this letter from Warren Berger.
We people of the states.
Yeah, they're just they're wrong in their history. I mean, I think I laid out as clearly as I know how to do the answer to the argument that the original Constitutional Convention was a runaway convention. And when you take that away from them, they have nothing. They absolutely have nothing. And I just love defying them and calling them what they are, as enemies of the Constitution. And so, let them deal with that, because we're pulling their people, a lot of their people. But the reason the strategy is, when we go to Tallahassee, I need 25 people from every district to actually show up. This is a John Birch Society countermeasure, because John Birch Society will show up with 200 people. They will be there with 200 people. We've got to show up with 2,000. And so, and the legislators know that we're right, but they want political cover. And so, if we show up with a superior force, they know our arguments are correct. We have got the legal firepower that we have that's from absolutely impeccable conservative sources. Mark Levin, me, and Rob Nadelson, who is with the Independence Institute in Colorado, and he was a former constitutional law professor at the University of Montana. He's a dyed-in-the-wool conservative, has as long a conservative credentials as I do, and he is a Montana. He ran for governor of Montana as a real conservative candidate, and he is. Everybody that knows anything about this knows that he is the #1 expert in the nation on Article 5. He's totally on board with us. And we've got the scholarship, we've got the firepower, we've got the people. I've litigated this kind of case, and their arguments have no meat behind them. It's just all scare tactics. And so, so there's an answer to that, and that's more people. It's as simple as that. We smile at them because they're normally our friend. They're going to agree with us on the Common Core. They're going to agree with us on stopping the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and that other kind of stuff. But at some point in time, you have to ask them, when have they ever stopped anything? When have they ever been successful? I've stopped stuff. I mean, I stopped a UN treaty a year ago. And so, no one can question my conservative bona fides and my ability to get stuff done. And so,
What's
that's,
the chance, I'm
Yeah.
asking more questions,
Yeah.
I don't mean to be doing that. I just asked one more question, is what's the chance of getting Jim DeMint to go on the record, which would be quite helpful?
it's, I don't want this recorded. So you can record it, but just don't ever show it to anybody.
Turn it off for a second, turn it off for 1 second.
When you start trying to get people to do something, they start thinking, oh, you want me to go to Tallahassee and you want me to go give meetings and stuff like that. But I think what they don't realize is most of the 100 people in each district you need, they can do it from the couch.
Right,
Because they
exactly.
can email and they can call the representative. So when you do when you're trying to pull those guys, because it's hard because if they got to do anything, if they got to miss their favorite TV show, it's hard to get them to do something. So
Right.
if there's a way to communicate that.
Yeah, we try. We try to make it clear. I need 100 of you who will call or make an email, write an email, and I need 25 of you who are willing to go to Tallahassee. And so, realistically, however, if the guy has a district office, going to the district office is almost as good as going to Tallahassee. And so the the in-person lobbying has a big effect. And so, I had a Virginia legislator tell me, I had 5 people come and talk to me about this in person. And that's why I voted it. 5 people.
To make the difference,
Yeah.
isn't that true?
5.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds so scary when they bring it up, 4,000 people, 4,000 districts, 100 people in every district. But when you look at it, in each of us, in our Tea Party organizations, we get 100 people at a meeting in a heartbeat, 200 on most days. So we can do this. We can really do this across the country. I have no doubt in my mind.
But I look at it, I look back to this, you've all been to meetings for multi-level marketing, where if everybody would just get 1 or 2 people and do the same thing, and it looks like it's an easy thing, but it's hard to do in practice.
It is hard, but, the good news is, I've seen it done, and I've done it. Built out, I built this, I built out a similar thing that delivered 3 million phone calls to DC in 8 days, before Al Gore had invented the internet. Or at least before he told me about it. And we were still using phones and faxes and snail mail. And so it can be done. It's hard work, but if you have a network of people, it becomes a whole lot easier. And we've got existing networks. We're not starting from scratch. That's the big thing, is we're not starting from scratch here. There are deep and wide networks. There's people I've worked with for 30 years that are coming on board. Now, not everybody that I've worked with for 30 years are coming on board, but I don't need everybody. I need, and there's lots of new friends. There's people Pam has worked with for a long time. So I've been doing political stuff full-time since 1980. Kind of the crossroads of Christianity, the Constitution, law and politics. I've been living in that crossroads since 1980. And this has gone faster than anything I've ever been involved in. In fact, good, the camera's turned away.
Turn it off.
Some of the state legislators, they're all about states' rights, and this is a natural fit for them. And the general idea of calling for a convention of states is, there's no opposition. They like it. And now when we start getting into details of specific amendments, that's when things will start to get dicey. But the whole idea of calling for this convention is on board.
The details, that's why we're purposefully not loading written amendments, because people will get all fixated on particular language, and it's not going to be the language anyway. It's going to go to the convention, and the language is going to get finalized there. And so that's the place you debate the particulars of the language, when you've actually got the people on the floor with the authority to do something about it. And so, and then you go back in ratification, then you can debate the language some more. But we're just, we're selling a change in the power structure, because that's that's the fundamental thing that has to happen, is we got to change the power structure. And I guarantee you, this is going to just shake Washington D.C. to their boots, which will be enormously fun.
Actually, it was the first part of June in Phoenix, just because it was 113, we thought it was.
Okay, it was,
Yeah, so it was, it was.
It's earlier, that's right.
It was earlier,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
It was 113 years.
Yeah, it was 113.
Is Chrisanne Hall involved in this?
No, not that I know, I don't know who that is.
She's a constitutional attorney in Florida.
Actually, I have an email, I emailed her to see if we could have a discussion with her.
Okay.
And
She's a
I
great
heard back.
spokesperson
She
in
is,
Florida.
she is an amazing,
I don't think there's any question
actually
she'd be
nationally.
Okay, let's get it,
Yeah.
you give me an appointment with her.
I'm gonna be
Okay,
with her husband Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay,
okay.
you let her know that I want to talk to her. Yeah, I will look you up.
One thing I want every one of you guys to leave with is a lot of literature, because we have things that you can take back to your people to have them explain this whole set. We can give you
You
sets
print
of
that
this.
off.
Oh,
You
yeah,
can
you
also
can print it
print
out,
off,
but.
we've got a bunch of them here.
You gave
There's
us.
a bunch of, yeah. But
Can I
but
have
it's
them
good.
for Thursday?
Yes, you can.
I have Lou Merritt speaking in my group Thursday.
That's great.
Okay, yeah, yes,
That'd be
please.
great information
Yes.
to take.
Yeah.
Where's it at, so we can pick it up?
Booth 48.
At booth 48.
Room 48?
Booth 48.
Booth 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a Tea Party meeting on Thursday, 9/12.
Do you want to know what the guys behind you were saying?
Okay?
They said that you can't, you can have that stuff too.
That's okay.
But they said that you can't sell what you're doing because there are too many separate ones, so they're going for the one at a time.
Right.
That was the basic thing, wasn't it?
One
Who is
one
this?
proposed amendment at a
Yeah.
time.
They're in the booth, right directly
Is
behind
that
you.
Marin? No.
Yeah.
I am
Lewis
American.
Marin.
Okay, that's
That's
Lou Marin.
Lou Marin.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah.
Typhoon Lou? Is that his name?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's Typhoon Lou, yeah.
Here's the reality. Some version of this has got to take off. And the reality will be, whoever actually delivers is the one that's going to take off. So if in the next legislative session, they pass 15 amendments, well, great, that'll be what's going. If we pass 15 amendments, then great, that's what's going. Now, and so that'll settle the argument. It'll be settled 12 months from now. We won't be having this debate. But if you just think about conceptually, they're just, well, first of all, as a matter of public opinion, they're just wrong. If a call for a balanced budget amendment would have generated public attention, it would have done so by now, because it's been trying for almost 40 years.
That's right.
And so it hasn't been able to generate, and the reason is, it's an incomplete answer to the problem. It's a part, but it's incomplete. And we shouldn't go to the trouble of calling the convention and doing an incomplete. I mean, Levin got it exactly right. You need to do a package, and it's easier to sell a package than it is. And I've tested this in so many different ways. I'll take his challenge to see which one we can sell.
You know what he was saying.
I'm glad, and it's fine. His ideas would be germane at our convention, and so.
Does he have a unified state effort, or is it just a single amendment trying to?
No, what he's doing, I think, he's pulling from every state that's called for a balanced budget amendment in the last 40 years, and he's saying, we've got 18 already, or 25 already, and
Yeah, well, see, the
But
problem.
I think those same people would go for the package.
Well, most people would. Well, the
Everybody
people
has
would.
it, I suppose.
Leaders get tied to their own agendas at times, and you just. I mean, when I made the conclusion in right after the election that I wanted to investigate this, I went out and looked at all the various groups that are doing this, and I met with a lot of them, and I talked to a bunch more, and I read a bunch more. So I met with the Balanced Budget Amendment people, Dave Badolf, who's the head of the Balanced Budget Task Force, and then Scott Rogers, who's his executive director, who lives in Leesburg, which is 8 miles from me. I'm friends with those guys. But the problem with the Balanced Budget Amendment, there's a legal problem, there's a political problem. not with the amendment itself, but with their application process. The amendment itself is a good idea, it just needs to be written correctly, but, and as a part of the package, it's a good idea. But the legal problem is this. A bunch of states have passed idiosyncratic versions of BBA applications that can't be aggregated toward 34. Florida's, for example, is in a class by itself. It calls for a balanced budget amendment, a convention for a balanced budget amendment to propose a particular amendment that's worded exactly, they got the wording of the amendment right there. And unless another state calls for a wording exactly like that, it's not the best wording even, but unless they call for an amendment that is worded exactly like that, you aggregate to nothing. So it's a 1. You know, how far are we along with that Florida application? We got 1 out of 34. And you've got problems like that with a whole bunch of them. There's only, the people that wanted this to happen, like me, I count 15 that they have. Some of the 15 are 20, 30 years old, which presents the political problem. The political problem is that the grassroots networks that put those amendments, those applications in place, in Maryland, let's say, Maryland's one of them. Maryland's gone so leftist now. There's no chance that you can't count Maryland in one of the 38 that would ratify. And unless we're on a ratification track, we're wasting our time. And so, this isn't about calling them amendments. So part of it, and I don't know what Lou's view is, but some of the people who are pushing this, they don't really want to have a convention. They want to get close enough to a convention that they feel like Congress would propose a balanced budget amendment and send it out themselves. They get to 32. Yeah, they're scared. And you know that if they do that, what's going to happen is Congress is going to send us the weaseliest version of a balanced budget amendment they can possibly. We have a balanced budget amendment if we want to. That would be how it's worded, more or less. And so they don't. Some of them don't really want a convention. Rob Nadelson and I took a blood oath with each other that we were going to back whatever actually called a convention and force the convention, because we've got to validate this methodology of giving the states robust power. And so, so we concocted this solution, and but politically it's the best because we're building fresh structures today to not only call the convention but to get it ratified. And our solution is as big as the problem. And it just completely independently, it's exactly what Mark Levin was saying. I did forget to go back and 11 amendments Levin's proposed, 10 of them would be germane, 1 would not. His property rights amendment is worded in a way that limits not only the federal government's power, but the state government's power. And we don't want anything that's dealing with state government power.
You just reword that when you have.
We could, it would be, but property rights can and should be dealt with effectively. In fact, it has been dealt with effectively in 41 states already. And so you can stop the Kilo case, or the Kilo case, that is the bad case that's aimed at, has already been remedied in about 41 states. So it's a good thing, but we just want to focus on the federal government. And so that's the one deal, and Levin understands that, and he's okay with that.
Levin he never mentions executive orders, but that would still fall under the purview.
It's one of the ones I've written.
Right.
Yes, it would be. And basically, as I said in there, the most important rule in any organization is who makes the rules. And the answer of who makes the rules in the Constitution is Article 1, Section 1, which is actually the most important rule in the Constitution. All legislative authority is vested in Congress of the United States, which means the executive branch shouldn't make any rules, the judiciary shouldn't make any rules, and the UN shouldn't make any rules. And so, because you need to be able to vote the rascals out who make the rules.
Yeah.
And so.
The UN should make it?
Should not.
Right, but how is that included in the Constitution?
Well, it means that it would be unconstitutional to delegate to the UN through the treaty process the ability to make. So it's violating the spirit.
Okay, because I am having a problem with, why are we doing this and wording things when there's the original? Why are we not just sticking with the original?
Well, in a lot of respects, it's, take the general welfare clause.
That it was interpreted.
it's not worded the best. You know, we can learn what they really meant by it. I mean, it takes some work and digging, and you can dig it out, and it's okay. But it gives John Roberts, who I wish would resign from the Supreme Court so he could run for office, so I could send him a campaign contribution. I would send him $30 silver. But it gives them wiggle room because of the way it's worded. And so, you know, in the Commerce Clause, you know, they knew what commerce meant. And so one of the amendments that I would propose is just, actually, it's just simply clarifying the meaning of those two things. The Commerce Clause means Congress has the authority to regulate shipments across state lines. That's it. Not minimum wages, not babysitters, not anything else. It's shipments across state lines. That's what Commerce Clause meant.
That's one of the Liberty amendments, though, is Commerce Clause.
Well, yeah, he's got a fix for it, yeah, but we agree on the subject matter, and if we, in fact, I really hope that Mark Levin and I will both be delegates from Virginia. And so, I mean, the two of us, we can both make each other's amendments better than they are now. And there are other people like that. We can do it, yeah.
One of the problems, inherent problems with something like this, is that human nature is to digress. That's what we're doing. So I think, and I want to know what you think, I think it's absolutely crucial to accept the premise that we're headed for disaster. And if we don't do this, we're talking about the survival of liberty, the light in the world. It's no smaller than that. And when you begin to digress, you always have to come back to that.
Right.
Remember what it is we're trying to do. The objective here was to drain the swamp.
Right. That's exactly right. And so that's why we
Back to
keep
the
harping
island.
on what's the topic. The topic is reducing the power of the federal government. And so we're going to do that. And we're going to call a convention. We're going to empower people. Frankly, this was the aspiration of the Tea Party. When the Tea Party movement started, it was to get rid of Washington, D.C.'s excessive power. And the idea that we should stand up and speak up for that was right, but the plan wasn't in place to actually go execute something that would deliver the victory. And so this is the plan that delivers the
People
victory.
have to believe that there's an emergency.
Yeah.
And recent events are testimony to that.
Yeah.
We're starting to see the tipping point now.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mike, I'm sorry.
you go ahead.
When this happens, the state's rights are gonna supersede the federal government's rights. Has there been any thought given to the judicial process? I would think that would overturn a lot of Supreme Court rulings, and that would kind of cause some chaos in that.
Yeah, I mean, Levin's got a proposal on overriding Supreme Court opinions by the states. I would be okay with that. I think the proposal I talked about in there, I think is a better one, of changing how we pick the Supreme Court.
Right.
And
What about existing law that's already, like on land use, the eminent domain, for example?
well, the eminent domain things, I mean, the problem with eminent domain are state laws right now that do that. And so, but I think that you would see a process where the Supreme Court, if my version of the Supreme Court gets adopted, I guarantee you will see a change of judicial philosophy over time. And so those cases that went 6-3 the wrong way are going to go 36-14 the other way.
See, we were talking about the term limits. To
Yeah.
us, that's the most important thing
Yeah.
out of all of this, that's going to change everything, right? So if we have to pick one thing, wouldn't that be?
Well, but we don't have to. See, that's a good thing. We don't have to pick one thing. And so there's an argument. If I get to pick one thing, what I want to pick is the exclusive jurisdiction rule. I want an amendment that says if the federal government if the state governments can spend money on it, the feds can't. If the states can regulate it, the feds can't. If I only get one thing, that's the one thing I want. Because that changes the general welfare clause and the commerce clause, and
Reinforces the 10th Amendment.
But now,
Yeah.
that's what he was talking about, because that would slice every welfare program off the record, that would be it.
Yeah, it's
So
gonna-
he's saying you'd have chaos for, if
Well,
it
but see,
passed immediately.
it wouldn't, it would slice the federal component of those welfare programs off the books.
That's where they get the money, they'll have.
Well, they get a part of the money. They get most of the money from the states. The states are
Which is
savvy
the
with it.
authority.
That's
Yeah.
what California's got.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
and
the money
so,
wouldn't be
so
going
the,
out to
so
come
the
back down.
states, yeah, it wouldn't be, they wouldn't be taking the money to DC, dribbling some of it back to the states and giving the states the power, the responsibility to do all this. If the states want to run a big welfare state, they can. If they decide, no, we really don't want to have a big welfare state, they don't
And
have
it
to.
cost them less.
Right.
Much easier
Because
for
they
them.
won't have to.
And the money is there for
Federal
them to get.
Yeah, there would have to be some kind of transition. The one thing we can't do is to dishonor the people who paid in Social Security for all these years. You've got to have a transition coming. And, but that gets to the legislative level. It's not at the Constitutional Convention level. But if I was writing the legislation, what I would do is I would start selling off federal land to fund the trust fund.
The shortfall.
Sell
Yeah.
the empty buildings in DC.
Right, exactly. I mean, the federal government owns 90% of some western states, 70% of other western states. I think we could buy on 10%, you know, we sell it. And Tim Dunn, who's one of the board members of Citizens for Self-Governance, is a oil guy, and he says that the mineral rights that are owned in federal land right now, we could auction off the mineral rights and we would get at least $17 trillion for it.
Well, isn't China buying some of those rights?
Yeah, that's
Well,
the problem.
yeah, well, we need to make sure we sell it, auction off to Americans. But, yeah, well, I mean, we're a wholly owned subsidiary of China right
See,
now.
and
I
I
had a
remember
que-
when we used to be afraid of Japan. It seems like when I was in my early 20s, everybody said we're going to be Japan. So I think it just runs a cycle, right? And
Well, it does, except for China.
Big.
China's got, by a huge population, and they actually have a pretty savvy, evil government. I've spent 2 weeks in China 2 different times, both times as a guest of the Communist Party.
They have
And
financial problems too.
they do.
They're building huge housing projects
Go
that nobody
cities.
is
Well,
occupying.
cities. that-
They're in deficit
Yeah. Well,
up to
that's-
here also.
That's
That's
good.
their jobs program.
That's good. I'm glad for that.
And they haven't bought a US security probably in 4
But
years.
that's what I'm saying about Japan. The same thing. Japan had such a strong economy.
Yeah.
and now they don't.
Well, and that's good. I mean, because ultimately, we need a strong America. And we can't be a debtor. I mean, the stupidity of our debtor status is so bad. We give foreign aid to China. They own more than $1 trillion of our debt, and we give them gifts.
Still giving it to Japan.
The Arab countries.
And we, Egypt owned, the last I know, more than 10 billion of our national debt. Not a trillion, but it's 10 billion. We give aid to Egypt. Why are we giving aid? Well, first of all, we're giving aid to anybody. But why are we giving aid to countries that we've borrowed money from? A lot of money. If we're going to give them something, well, we'll just say, well, here's $100 million, but it's paying back.
Yeah.
It's,
And it goes towards the debt.
It's going toward the debt. Your gift this year is a debt payment. That's it.
I had a question about, so we want to get 100 people in each
Yeah.
legislative district. And my initial thought is, I live in just a nightmare district.
Mhm.
These people, way left.
Democrat.
What, further than Democrat. But, why bother with them? But would the argument appeal to them when you got them on the phone or going to see them? We're trying to take this power from DC and bring it back to Tallahassee, and that empowers you. Is that an argument
It
that they're
is.
receptive to?
Well, it is some of them.
Or is there a recommendation that you
No,
have
I
to deal
think
with
that
this?
that's the basic thing. Mark Meckler he loves speaking to leftist organizations. He likes going and taunt them and stuff. But he's very gracious. A very gracious taunter.
They actually like it.
Oh, they do. They love.
They say, oh, you've opened
Yeah,
your eyes.
yeah. And so the way he says it is this: when I'm in Berkeley, California, I ask the people in Berkeley, who do you want making decisions for Berkeley?
Mhm.
Berkeley,
Mhm.
or Sacramento, or Washington DC,
Or the UN.
or the UN.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, you know what, speaking of the UN, I'll just go aside for a second. A friend of mine is a major pollster, and he was running a survey where they were doing 4 times as many people in the survey as the normal, so they could do all kinds of special crosstabs. And I got him to ask some sovereignty questions for me, because I battle UN convention issues as a main part of what I do normally from 8 to 5. And so one of the questions, the crosstabs he asked was, do you consider yourself a citizen of your city, your state, the U.S., or the world? And so on my sovereignty question was the second highest, most popular position, conservative position of the like 50 issues he surveyed. The most popular issue was retaining "In God We Trust" as our national motto, and retaining under God, one nation under God, and the national the Pledge of Allegiance. The second most popular was my sovereignty question, that the United States should make its own domestic law, not the UN. Okay, 92% of Americans supported that position. The people that said America was their number one was like almost 100%. World citizens, people who identified themselves as world citizens, a plurality supported my position on sovereignty, which is, you know, think it's crazy. But it was like 44-33, and the rest were undecided. So I mean, they were way off the rest of them. But still, even that, I mean, that's how deeply the view that Americans should make the law for, which is basically why it's called Citizens for Self-Governance. Everybody believes that they should govern themselves. That's the common denominator, and that's what this really is about, is that this really is about preserving the right of self-government. And we live to fight another day over the particulars of lots of things, because, you know what, those issues are going to come to a locality near you, and you will fight whatever you want. But the question is, who should decide, where should it be decided?
Even a liberal is more interested in himself than someone else.
That's right.
Yeah, but there's the people that I know that, yeah, they want to self-govern themselves, but they don't give enough credit to their neighbor to self-govern.
But, yeah.
But they can't take care of themselves.
Yeah, I understand that. And I mean, they're like the, I went to Gonzaga Law School, which is the #1 law school in the country in a particular category. The category is law schools located on the north bank of the Spokane River. And,
Congratulations on
that. But I took constitutional law from a Harvard law professor, Paul Freund. And I was in visiting with Freund, and he was a liberal. I'd had about 40 credits of con law from a hardcore conservative originalist when I was in undergraduate school. So Freund wasn't getting to me philosophically, but it was fun to have this big liberal as my con law professor. And he said, Mike, you know, it's too bad we make so many decisions in this country by counting heads rather than by weighing heads. Which meant the elites should be making the decision.
Right.
Smart people should be making the decision, not self-government.
But that's what's happening
The
now.
That's right. And so that's what those people believe.
It's
But
not waiting for us.
yeah, but what we need to do is convince them that they will be better off making local self-government decisions, so that the idiots in the Tea Party, you don't want John Boehner making decisions for you, do you? You know, that's how I would appeal to the people in your, you know, you want Eric Cantor and John Boehner making decisions for you? You want the Tea Party making? No, you bring those back locally, where the people here, they're more reasonable, can make them fine. And we're selling the benefit of local self-government, because it's right, it's the right thing.
And that's what the founders intended.
That's right, and it's the only way liberty is going to be preserved, because the enemy of liberty is centralized government.
You made the joke, it was so funny, you made the joke about what you would have the federal government control. That is what the founders intended.
Yeah, well, there's actually patent office.
Yeah.
There's only like a couple things. Coin money, the post office. But I think we can even jettison the post office now. But
and the states can take care of everything
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really close to that. Yeah.
I
gonna make a U-turn back to
Okay.
the balanced budget amendment. 'Cause
Yeah.
I get asked this question all the time. Okay, and I have a very simplistic answer as to why it standing alone doesn't work or won't work.
Yeah.
And I just wanna
Verify,
validate it
yeah.
with you. Okay, I say that if we were to pass just the balanced budget amendment, the Democrats, the liberals would jump on that, because what that would do was it would enable them to say, okay, we have got to balance this budget every year, so therefore we're gonna have to raise taxes. They will design it such that the requirement for defining what the expense side of the equation is very loose, so then all of the give and take will be on the income side. And so it would not do us any good to have that balance, it would do us harm to have that balanced budget amendment standing on itself, the way that the Congress would define it, would end up defining
If the
it.
Constitution,
Does
the
that make
Supreme
sense?
Court is interpreting that amendment also, Lord knows what they could do to it.
Mhm.
Well,
Wouldn't do
you're
anything to limit
you're
this.
right, but.
So we need a simple answer to
Well,
that
you're
question.
right, you're right, and let me just quantify it for you. The budget of the United States right now is 2/3 of the money that comes in or 2/3 of the money that we spend is tax revenue. 1/3 is borrowed, okay? So unless there's a dramatic decrease in spending, which we can see from the last go-around of what happened on the shutdown, there's not gonna be a decrease in spending. So if there's no increase in spending, there's gonna have to be an across-the-board 33% increase in taxes. That's what would have to happen.
50%.
50%.
Okay, you're right, 50% increase to gain that.
To gain on it.
Now, those numbers actually tell you what the legitimate spending is. Defense spending is about 1/3 of all of our spending.
But it's also dynamic. Entitlements, including Affordable Care Act, and servicing the national debt are soon gonna take up the whole budget.
Right.
Very soon.
Very soon, but right now, they're, in round numbers, 2/3 of the federal budget. And so if we were to limit the federal government to its intended jurisdiction, it'd be really close to 1/3. And so the tax, we could, if we wanted to, simply keep the tax rate the way they are for a while till we, spend only the 1/3 and use the other third to in the next 10 years or so, pay off the debt entirely. And then we get rid of that taxes. I mean, that would be one way to do it. I like Tim Dunn's sell the oil drilling rights instead as a way to pay it off.
Yeah.
But the legitimate constitutional government spending is approximately 1/3 of the current budget. That's it. And so what needs to be done is to jettison their ability to spend the other 2/3. If we don't get rid of their ability to spend the other 2/3, a balanced budget amendment is just going to put us in the lockdown position of incredibly high taxes and a constitutional mandate. But right now, there are incredibly high taxes. It's just on our kids and grandkids.
What about the implementation of this size of a package? How do you foresee phasing this in so that it isn't just hitting the wall and throwing us into chaos?
I thought about that, and of course, that would have to be designed at the convention. But there would have to be thought going into it. The idea that I have is, and I would want other people to weigh in and help me solve it, because so far it's just me sitting in the computer and figuring it out, which is, it's an interesting way to get started, but it isn't the final answer. But the first thing you do is you cut off any new programs. No expansions at all. So we have these new rules, no expansions, no cost of living adjustments, nothing. It's just
Everything's frozen.
That's right, you're done with any of this. And then I think you put categories of kinds of expenditures, like the Department of Education, for example. That can be wrapped up in about 2 or 3 years. So you could have categories like that, which can be easily just transferred to the states. And you put a time limit.
Commerce too.
Yeah. Lots of programs of that nature. the entitlements are gonna be the tricky part. And so to me, Social Security has to be treated, has to get the highest level of protection, and you
It's
need.
not an entitlement.
Well, I mean, it is only because of the way they've structured it. If you go to the Social Security website, you know what it says? No one has a legal right to get
Right.
anything.
Right.
They have, the Congress has the ability to change it and to give you nothing.
There's an account number, like a bank account, that we're giving them money, and that's all.
That's it. You have no right. So the first thing to do would be to transfer ownership of your account to you. And if that's the case, then it becomes, and so then the question of how do we fund all these accounts? And so we need to have a way to do that. But that can be
Another
designed.
amendment,
Well,
basically.
it's gonna be basically a section within the general welfare clause, because when you rewrite the general welfare clause, all this stuff goes away, because the Social Security Administration, all of it flows out of the general welfare clause. And so you're gonna have phasing rules in it, but you can, phasing rules can be
You
written.
could, if you did that, then you could implement like Galveston, like Pinochet's plan that are superior to
Yeah.
ours, right?
Yeah,
That would
Yeah.
be the same with welfare, right? I
Right.
mean, it's like I lived in a very poor part of South St. Petersburg.
yeah,
And the majority of my neighbors were on some form of disability or
Yeah.
welfare or whatever. And the problem is, I didn't see any changing in their thought. So I just, are we supposed to have the answer to that, too? Because you
No.
just can't cut all those people
no, we
off.
can't, but you have to, there'll have to be a transitional strategy, and what will be decided at the Constitutional Convention of the States is who decides what the transition strategy is. You have to empower somebody, and so you'll have to write, the constitutional language will have to have timing on it. So they have to say, this shall be this part shall be effective X, this part shall be effective Y. And so you give a deadline, and you're gonna say, 10 years, you got 10 years to wrap this up. Or, Social Security, you got 30 years to wrap this up.
And that kind of goes to Barb's point, is
Yeah.
rather than all of these amendments going into effect kind of at the same time,
Right,
they're kind of phased in or
right.
something, so it's not
Well, there's gonna
kind
have
of
to be a level of comfort with
chaos.
people that, that it isn't, I have to use the word chaos, and it could
Yeah.
just be,
Well, we already tested it when we did the 96 welfare reform,
Right.
except that we didn't follow through on it.
Right,
Because there, all of a sudden, a lot of people weren't on welfare in the next 3 or 4 years, but we didn't
we
keep
didn't
pushing.
keep going, right.
And now they're back on it.
Right.
Well, no, I
Right.
mean, we
But we
abandoned
could
our
do it.
principles.
But if we put the mechanisms in place and we have a drop dead, let's see, I say 30 years is the maximum for anything, maybe 25,
That's a
I don't
long
know.
time.
Yeah, but, well, for Social Security, you may have to, it may take that.
If you wean people off of it, slowly but surely, the private sector will take over.
Yeah.
So it's not, people are not gonna feel it, if it's done right, there won't be a reason for chaos.
And if you talk about that a lot, you won't have this convention.
Right, that's
No,
right,
that's right.
that's right. So
That's
we,
right.
we just need to say,
It's still a-
it will have to be dealt with, or it won't pass. The ultimate things won't pass if there's not some fair transitional planning.
We're focused on these three things.
That's right,
And that's what we need to focus on.
right,
right,
right.
And stay away from specifics.
right.
Because then you start splitting everybody up into camps and your support disintegrates.
Yes.
And we have to agree that that a new decision-making plan for solving those problems is better than the existing decision-making plan, whatever they are.
Right, and big government is eroding your liberties.
Right.
NSA, IRS, Benghazi, everybody can see that. That's turning right as we
Right.
sit here.
Right. Okay.
Michael, do you have a pamphlet or something of the amendments that you have in mind for a convention like this?
I will send them to you privately, but I'm not circulating them.
You're not putting it on.
Yeah, because I don't want the debate to be about the particulars. If you want to see my thinking, I'll tell it to you privately.
And that's what happens in the convention, right?
Right.
What we want to do is just get the convention. One of the things,
Because I'm a nitpicky.
fragmenting, one of the things that bothers me is every time I turn around, there's a new group spouting something. And for instance, this group, and you said you don't know what they think. Isn't it possible to talk to each other and kind of consolidate maybe?
Well, there-
Because it gets very confusing for everyone, because they hear this and then they hear this, and trying to keep up with it all, it's driving you crazy.
let me